Hello, everyone. How do you know if you are emotionally stuck? How do you know if you're in a relationship that is one that is unhealthy or toxic? Is there a way to know? There certainly is. We'll discuss that next on Journey to Healing.
Welcome to Journey to Healing. Do you find yourself discouraged, troubled, in need of healing, but not sure where to turn? John Euler, a licensed professional counselor, is here to help. John has more than 25 years of professional experience helping people deal with the issues that keep them emotionally and spiritually stuck. There is help. There is hope. There is a God who loves you and wants to help you find peace and strength. And John Euler is here to help you find that on this edition of Journey to Healing.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Euler, and this is Journey to Healing. We're in a series, we're in the midst of a series on grief and loss. We're looking at those things that will keep us stuck in the process of moving forward. Before I begin, I want to remember that there's a way of asking questions if you all are interested. There's a text box. For those of you viewing this live on the program, there's a text box, and feel free to ask any questions. I will try to be mindful to watch for that. You can also submit questions during the week to SurvivorSupport.net, as well as on my YouTube channel. I put up the programs each week. They're usually there at the beginning of the week or the end of by Sunday evening. If you have any questions, if you've watched any of the videos, go ahead and submit those questions, or if you would like me to expand upon something, I'm more than happy to do so. Today we're continuing a series looking at what are the things that hinder us. Last week we looked at the importance of being able to place responsibility where it belongs. That is really one of the keys to emotional health and to spiritual growth and to spiritual development. If I cannot distinguish between my stuff and someone else's stuff, my responsibility and someone else's responsibility, then I am not going to be in a position to fulfill what God has designed me to fulfill, which is my purpose. I will get that muddied. I will find that I will give myself away, not in a healthy way. We are called to lay down our lives on behalf of someone else, but that is by choice, and that is strategic. If I find that I am just giving and giving and giving, then I am in no position to figure out, am I giving to someone who truly needs it? And the kind of person that we need to be giving to is one that has a burden. A burden in the Greek that comes out of Galatians chapter 6, it says, bear one another's burdens. What is a burden? A burden is something that, through no fault of someone else's, something has come into that person's life that is too big for them to handle, but they can't remove it off of themselves. So it's theirs, such as the death of someone in their family. A wife who lost her husband, he went off to war. Maybe he's a police officer and he was shot in the line of duty. Anytime there's something that I had nothing to do with that has come into my life, that is called a burden. That usually is not brought about by other people. It can, if there is something involuntary going on. Maybe a car accident, you can have a 9-car pileup, and yours was car number 8. But then again, the question is, what happened with car number 1? So generally speaking, a burden is that which has come into my life through no fault of my own, because I live in a fallen world. We are, though, to carry our own load or bear our responsibility. When I get those two things mixed up, because my responsibility, if you remember last week, my responsibility in the Greek, carrying my own load, is the word for a knapsack. That is enough for me to carry. That comes out of Proverbs chapter 1 and chapter 2. That is, doing what is right, just, and fair. I can only do what is right, just, and fair to the extent that I have someone else in my life. If I'm stranded on a tropical island, I can never do what is not right, unjust, and not fair. Even with the movie Castaway, where you had Tom Hanks talking to Wilson, remember? And he was apologizing to Wilson. We sort of understand what that's about. If he didn't have that volleyball with the little face, he would have gone crazy. But the question is, do you really need to apologize to an inanimate object? And no, you don't. You haven't offended a volleyball. You may flatten it, but you haven't offended it. So being able to discern the difference between a boulder that it had nothing to do with you versus a knapsack is really, in my estimation, the crux of counseling. To the extent that I get those mixed up, something negative is going to happen, and it's really going to happen within me. Or if I'm selfish, I'm placing my responsibility, my knapsack, on somebody else. So we're looking at some of the, we've looked at some of the hindrances, those things that will hinder our growth. One of the greatest ones is not being able to discern my stuff from somebody else's or their stuff from mine. I wanted to look at today what some of the additional hindrances are. And one of those is not being able to discern whether or not I'm stuck. Now, what do I mean by that? If I can't tell that I'm stuck, I'll be spinning my wheels and be very frustrated, because I'll probably be in a relationship or have relationships that are in one way or another that are hurting me, that are frustrating me. Yet I will stay in those relationships. So an important piece of getting unstuck, an important piece of being able to move into healing through the grief and loss process is beginning to discern in the here and now what's going on as far as who's putting responsibility on whom. Well, how do you know? How do you know if that's going on, and how do you know also if you're stuck from something in the past as far as that kind of relationship? You'll know that you're stuck if you remain in an unhealthy relationship where there's sufficient evidence of the fact that you're being used for someone else's best interest at the expense of your own. We've looked at the movie Tangled, we've looked at Mother Gothel, and we've looked at Rapunzel and their interaction. That movie is very powerful, and if you go back to previous episodes, I show a couple of clips from those, showing how Mother Gothel appeared to be loving.
I love you very much, dear.
I love you more.
I love you most.
Don't forget it. You regret it. Mother knows best.
She appeared to be dutiful, but meanwhile, she was really using Rapunzel. The entire relationship was based upon a lie. If you know the story, if you haven't watched it, I encourage you to watch it. The entire basis of their relationship was a lie. Not on Rapunzel's part, but on Mother Gothel's part. Rapunzel gave Mother Gothel the benefit of the doubt. She didn't realize she was giving a pig the benefit of the doubt. Now, what do I mean by pig? Exactly what Jesus said. Do not cast your pearls before swine. I had someone ask me a little earlier this week, could I define that? I want to check out if there's any questions. Okay, I want to be mindful of that. Somebody asked me if I could redefine what it means to not cast our pearls before swine. I will find myself in emotional distress. Maybe that sounds a little too harsh. I'll find myself not okay on the inside. I'll be able to take my blood pressure. I'll be able to take or monitor my pulse, my breathing. But blood pressure is a pretty good way of sensing how I'm doing. Gastrointestinal issues is another good way to find out how I'm doing. Casting pearls before swine simply means this: I am taking what is valuable, so your pearl or pearls are that which is important to you and belongs to you by virtue of your birth. As a matter of fact, think about our founding fathers in the U.S. We conclude these things, right? We look at these things, we assume, we assess. These things are self-evident that what? That all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain rights that they don't have to apologize for. So you have certain things that you should never apologize for. Those things happen to be, in terms of relationships, your preference, your opinion, your emotions, what we call your voice, your own personal power. When you give those things up, you are not acting in love. You're actually acting out of fear. And things are going to happen that are not going to be beneficial. Because ultimately, a pig, a person who is self-centered, am I calling someone a nasty name? No more than Jesus called them. Jesus said, do not cast your pearls before swine. And how much more stark would that be, or dramatic, because he was talking to a primarily Jewish audience. So all the more. It was clear then that somebody in the audience was prone to, and it was a large audience, somebody was prone to giving that which was important, their time, effort, energy, resources, giving of themselves, to someone who was not worthy of that. And what happens if you do that? Jesus said, they will trample your pearls. What is that? They certainly are not appreciating and valuing what you're giving to them. So you keep giving and giving and giving and giving, and they keep taking and taking and taking, and it never changes. They never improve. Not only do they trample your pearls, but what do they do next? They'll eventually start to create emotional harm on some level in you. He said, they will trample your pearls, and then they will turn on you. They will certainly turn on you when you try to stop giving them your pearls. When you turn the spigot off, when you say, thanks, but no more. When you tell them, I'm sorry, but this isn't working out. You'll now find whether or not, or the extent to which the person was a genuine pig. They'll pretty much turn on you at that point, and then they've dispelled any doubt. So we have to be able to discern who we're dealing with. It is not spiritual to continue to give ad infinitum, ad nauseum. That is not spirituality. That is actually poor stewardship. You are entrusted with your life, your time, talents, abilities, resources, and if you invest those, if you give those to those who are going to squander them, you are wasting that which was entrusted to you, and you're not helping that person, and you're not able to help those that actually do need help. And it's a never-ending cycle, and that's why psychology comes along, and they have terms for it. We call it enabling. We call it rescuing. You've heard of the term codependent. It's all focusing on the same kind of concept. The father of the prodigal son, he could have rescued his son. He was wealthy. He could have paid a servant to go out and keep an eye on the son. But he was willing to risk the worst-case scenario by letting him go. In doing so, he was speaking the truth in love. It doesn't mean nice. Again, it is not spiritual to be nice. You are not spiritual. It doesn't mean we should be mean and nasty, but you will not find the word nice in Galatians 5 in the fruit of the Spirit. It's not listed anywhere in there. Being nice is okay, but the working definition of being nice is everybody has to say you're nice. You're looking for a response. But what happens if you have to establish boundaries? As a matter of fact, let me ask you this. Was Jesus nice? Okay. He was not nice. He was loving. He was the most gracious person you'll ever find. But he was never nice. And he never worried about being nice. Why? He was always concerned with being accurate and truthful and strategic in people's lives. He was interested in making sure that he had the right amount of, and I qualify that, he wasn't worried about it, but in each situation, he brought to bear the right amount of grace and truth. He was characterized by grace and truth. Those are the two ingredients that have to be applied in the right appropriate amount in any given situation, or I will be applying or misapplying the right thing at the wrong time or the wrong thing at the right time. Okay, and that's why it's not going to help. So I have to be discerning. And oftentimes what happens, if somebody comes out of a home, if they grew up in a home where they were not allowed to have boundaries, if they were not allowed to have a voice, if they were not allowed to have their own opinion or preference or feelings, then they had to give up the one thing within them that allows them to discern, and that is our intuition. You'll hear me repeat that time and time again. The two issues in play in relationship all the time are conscience and intuition. David prayed in Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24, the two last verses, Lord, search me and know my heart. Show me my anxious thoughts. That comes from one's intuition not working. Show me my anxious thoughts and my hurtful ways. That comes from crossing boundaries. That comes from violating one's conscience. And lead me into the way, or lead me in the way everlasting. So in relationships, you always have the issue of boundaries, which really is a manifestation of respect and value and appreciation. That's what's in play all the time, day in and day out in relationships. To the extent that I allow my ego to grow, to the extent that I start caring more about me than you, then I will begin to encroach upon your boundaries because I will begin to devalue you. I will begin to think of you less than God does. So I will rationalize and justify why I will start doing what I will start doing. I will start benefiting off of you in one way or another. And that's not healthy, and that's not right. We're called to do what is right, just, and fair. If I encroach upon your boundaries, meaning I trespass against you, if you don't have any boundaries, there's nothing to trespass. The fact that Jesus said, do not trespass, or forgive us our trespasses as we forgive others, and that presupposes they've asked for forgiveness, by the way. To trespass presupposes there are boundaries. We have to understand that we are valuable, and so are others. And it has to be a mutual degree of respect in order for a relationship to be healthy. Continuing the indicators, though, so how do you know if you're in a relationship that is not healthy? You'll find yourself making excuses for why you remain in an unhealthy relationship. So the first one is remaining in an unhealthy relationship. If you're in a relationship that is harming you, how do you know? Let's say there's no bruises. If there are bruises, you're in an unhealthy relationship. If you find that you can't speak up and speak the truth, you're in an unhealthy relationship. If you find that your preferences are continually being minimized and ignored, and you're becoming a doormat, you're in an unhealthy relationship. If you make excuses for why you're in an unhealthy relationship, you're going to be stuck. Feeling guilty for thinking about having your own life and having your own opinion, meaning for starting to have a life. If you find that you're feeling guilty about that, more than likely somebody else has sort of made you feel guilty. Why? Because they've been benefiting from the way things are. Now that's different than setting one's goals aside possibly for a time. If you think about a decent parent, they're going to have to do things they maybe prefer not to do, such as work harder or work in a job that maybe was not part of their career plan. They will sacrifice themselves, but not make the children feel guilty for it. It's not the child's fault. Now, that's different on occasion if a parent is doing the right thing. And let's say you have some blossoming adolescents, and they are starting to become very myopic. We can't imagine a teenager being myopic. There is, I think, a time to help a child realize what it is you are sacrificing. That's different than bemoaning your lot in life all the time. So there's a difference. But if you come home miserable and make the child or children or spouse feel guilty that you're going off to work, then you're harming them. You're becoming toxic, and they will start to respond in an unhealthy way to make sure that you're okay. So instead of you turning to the Lord and trying to ask Him to help, what are you doing? You're starting to require of others around you that which they have no control over, instead of going to God with that and asking Him for emotional support and asking Him for help. If I require of someone else what they can't provide, and ultimately my emotional stability cannot depend upon somebody else, to the extent that it does, I'm going to make life miserable for them. Or if I'm around someone, I'm going to flip it a little bit. If I'm around someone who's doing that, then I am finding that my focus, my healthy focus now has changed. And it's probably all about trying to keep them calm, trying to make sure they don't get upset. So if I'm finding myself feeling guilty about just having my own life and trying to do some reasonable things, such as have my own pastime, my own friends, some hobbies. How about this? Some time alone. If I feel guilty for that, I have worked with some folks that on occasion, especially as I work with folks remotely, sometimes over the telephone, there are occasions where I will hear, let's say, a mother who has to talk to me in the bathroom. Her kids are knocking at the door, and you know kids are going to wait. You know that, right? Kids will wait until the most inopportune time. They have natural little radars. So I haven't had any men do that, but some women, you can just hear they're huddled, they're hunkered down in the bathroom because that's the only place they can find peace. A little time, just an hour to themselves. Okay, there's something wrong with that. That's not healthy in the long run. But it's easy to fall into that. Trust me, I know. But just know it's not healthy. And so we'll start to show signs that that's not a good thing. Our bodies are going to show it. We're going to have stress being an accumulation of emotions. I'm going to start to find my mood changes. I'm going to find that I start to have anxiety. I may start to have depression. Those are indicators that things are not going okay. Also, another indicator is emotional ambivalence, where taking care of you makes you feel guilty. Kind of a little bit of what we just talked about. Do you feel guilty if you want to have your own preference, but find that you can't? You find that you're almost going to have to pay the price for having that. But what happens if you actually have the opportunity to get away? Do you start to feel guilty? Think about Rapunzel. She finally was able to leave the tower, but she actually snuck out. What's wrong with that? Well, she's a kid, but if I leave a situation, now kids are held hostage, so in this scene that I'm about to show you, Rapunzel is 16, so it's a challenge because a teenager, a minor, is still somewhat held hostage by their parents in this sense, that they are dependent, hence we call them dependents. But let's say I'm an adult and I actually have a choice. And I decide, this year I would really like to go on vacation, just myself and my spouse and my family without mom. Or this year, I would like to actually have Christmas at our house. What's going to happen? If people understand, which they actually should, then you're going to find your stress is lighter. But if you find it's you always having to do the giving, you might find that you just say, dang it, I'm going to have my own. And so you make an abrupt about change, and it feels good for a moment. But then while you're there at your chosen location, you start to feel guilty. What is that an indication of? That's an indication that things were not resolved beforehand. And that's different than, as it were, what's called no contact. If you're in a situation that's highly abusive or highly manipulative, it is absolutely appropriate and fine to remove yourself and put a very strong barrier, sometimes distance. That's okay for a time, unless you haven't had a chance to resolve things on the inside. And then what will happen is you'll find that you've substituted a physical boundary for actual emotional boundaries. And those that have done that have thought that because they left home has left them, they sometimes will find that they end up recreating the dynamics of home, of the past, in their current relationships. So it's called crazy making, right? Where before you know it, it's almost like I'm becoming my own parent, or I'm actually almost forcing my spouse or significant other, without even realizing it, to almost begin to replicate the craziness I came from. So how do you know if, with respect to that, having left home but home not leaving you, how do you know what that looks like? Well, let's take a look at Rapunzel as she has gotten out of the tower and she's enjoying life for a moment.
I can't believe I did this! I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I did this! Mother would be so furious. But that's okay. I mean, what she doesn't know won't kill her, right? Oh my gosh, this would kill her. This is so fun! I am a horrible daughter. I'm going back. I am never going back! I am a despicable human being. Woohoo! Best day ever!
You know, I can't help but notice you seem a little at war with yourself here.
What?
Can you relate to that? You've got all this ambivalence on the inside. That's probably an indication that things are not completely settled, completely finished, that you actually may be stuck. A love-hate relationship with someone you supposedly care about, but you find that things that come out of your mouth are not what you really wanted. You actually say things that are hurtful, or you don't say things that you actually should have or needed to. That's another indicator. In order to heal, you must move toward truth, regardless of how long it takes, or how much pain there will be, or what the cost will be. And that's really the missing ingredients in any toxic or dysfunctional relationship. Truth is being compromised. Truth is being silenced. Truth is being withheld. Why? Because to speak the truth, what happens? The selfish person is now going to react. Why? Because they're a pig. Now, does that mean every single person that we interact with is a pig? No. But you'd better find out if you're dealing with a pig. Why? Because Jesus said, don't do it. So the question is, are you taking matters into your own hands by deciding to stick around a pig? And what I mean by that is, if you find yourself in a marriage that has become toxic, that has become absolutely one-sided, where you can't speak truth, lest stuff happen, that's an indication that you're dealing with a pig. Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 19 and 20, calls that person a fool. Proverbs chapter 26, 27, and 28, 3,000-year-old book, it says, do not interact with fools. Read those 3 chapters. You're going to find so much dealing with fools and how we're not supposed to deal with them, and how it's better to live on the corner of a roof than to deal with somebody that's contentious. And that doesn't just have to do with one gender or the other. If I'm dealing with someone who is causing me harm, I will find that I'm being chipped away a little by little. And that is not healthy. That is not godly. That is not spiritual. That is actually poor stewardship. I need to be able to finally speak the truth in a reasonable fashion. I need to be able to risk. And we're going to look at what happens when I find myself in an anxiety-producing relationship on the other side of this break. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the text box down below this screen.
Are you or someone you know a survivor of abuse and wondering where to turn for trustworthy help and insight into the effects of such abuse? Ever wish you had access to a resource that could help you continue your progress in healing? SurvivorSupport.net is that resource. Developed by John Euler, a seasoned therapist with years of experience working with sexual abuse survivors, SurvivorSupport.net is a one-of-a-kind resource to help you understand the impact of abuse and to help you understand the nature of those who harmed you in order to help you gain clarity and continue healing. If you are interested in speaking with John Euler about your situation or in having John conduct a consultation or a training for your church or organization, SurvivorSupport.net serves as a convenient method of contacting him. Our program, Journey to Healing, is made possible through the generous donations of viewers like you. There are many opportunities and needs that Survivor Support is attempting to meet, and your monthly support or one-time gift would be extremely helpful as we seek to meet those needs and opportunities. Simply visit SurvivorSupport.net and you will see the link to donate on the homepage. We thank you.